Hi, everyone. Uh, I hope you can hear me well. Second. Yes. Hi, good evening, good morning. We are doing Mighty Champions Daily Live, and we've been talking about gratitude, about positive psychology, how it helps us focus and pay more attention to what's working, because we know that attention is a core component of how we end up feeling. And yesterday we did speak a lot about failing to notice things and why that happens. So how the brain is designed to look for threats, designed to find the negative in some ways. And today we will be moving towards how we can train the brain to notice what's good without denying reality. So not lying to the brain, but at the same time, because there is negativity bias, as we saw, and because we could be mm, either habitual or more inclined to look for what's not good, focusing attention, training attention can actually be um, a way to feel better and feel better sustainably. So, yeah, we'll be doing some practices, one at the beginning of our session as we do, and one towards the end, where we will be using questions to to get the attention back. And and yeah, so that's probably the structure of how we'll be going through today. Thanks for being here. Thanks for attending Mighty Champions Daily Live. We come here every day, different experts, to really talk about the foundations mm, of mental health, and not just that, but just living life fully and feeling better. So, as we do, I invite you to sit comfortably and alert so that we can just spend a few minutes bringing us as much as we can with our presence into the session. And with that, closing your eyes, if that feels okay, you can even lower your gaze. And then connecting to your breath. Taking a few deep breaths. Becoming aware of any sounds that might be around you, noticing different sounds, moving your attention, awareness from one sound to the next. Could be distant, could be close to you. Becoming aware of any physical sensations that arise. And reflecting on, the fact that the quality of life, of my life, of our lives, it depends probably less on what's happening to me actually in reality and more on what the mind is repeatedly noticing. So thinking about, if we can learn to appreciate life as it is, as we're experiencing it. And then setting an intention for yourself, for our time together, that what is it I want to pay more attention to in my life? What is it? Is there any kindness, connection, goodness that I could be missing? Is there something that I can train myself or I want to pay more attention to in my life? And with that, one more time, going back to the breath, and then slowly opening your eyes. Now, we've used, this sort of comparison before as well, but we know that two people could be living exactly the same day, facing similar challenges, having similar resources, and yet there are, and even not two different people within ourselves. Like if we notice ourselves one day to the other with the same set of challenges, same resources, there could be a day when we are feeling positive, grateful, alive, and the other time we could be feeling frustrated, depleted. Now, while there can be sometimes, maybe I'm hungry and I'm just like irritated because it's really like physiological. But there are lots of times when the attitude will make a difference. So while life is not inherently different, it's the attention that could be very different from one day to the other. And if you think about, how it's been going on last, say, few days or few weeks, perhaps thinking about what has your attention been practicing recently. So if you think about your own attention, where do you think your attention has been lying or focused on the last few days? What are you looking for or, searching with your attention? Where is your attention these days? Think about Dini wants to know the topic. The topic is, I'll type it as well. It's um, it's how our attention can change our outlook. So that's the topic for today. And yeah, I'm reflecting on where has your attention been last few days or recently? Is it more focused on the negative? Is it more on the positive? And now, if we think about attention, it's one of our greatest, say, superpowers. Now, we become what we repeatedly notice. So, if I asked you to spend, say, the next few minutes looking for everything that's, say, blue around you, you would suddenly start noticing blue everywhere. Not because there is suddenly more of blue available, but because the attention has changed. And like there's a story. Don't think of, say, a white elephant, and immediately the brain is thinking of, creating an image, getting into stories, narratives about just with a word. how we start relating to it, and the mind starts running towards it. So if the mind has been spending a lot of time, or spending a lot of its energy looking for, say, disappointment, looking for problems, looking for mm, finding criticism that's coming from others, then that same thing becomes easier to find. So, not because life contains, say, only criticism, but because our attention has become trained. So, we could be looking for conflict, we could be looking for, mm, negative scenarios, we could be looking out for judgment. And And the more we spend our time, the more we spend our energy looking out for those things, the better we become at it. So, suddenly you might realize that I'm really good at looking for disappointment, because I've just trained myself so well. And now it's become so easy. I'm quite adept at it. S- And that's, the great thing about attention, that it can be trained to find whatever the order is, it's going to do that. And therefore, most people may think that I will practice gratitude when I feel grateful, or when great things are happening. But the reality is that gratitude is first a practice. We don't start with the feeling. We start with the attention. We start with practicing it, and then slowly it becomes a feeling. Then eventually it becomes a habit. So, gratitude changes the brain, or has the potential to change the brain, because it trains attention, and not because it's changing circumstances. Yeah, and I find that very interesting, how a simple practice like gratitude can actually do so much good to the brain, because it's training us to now start looking for the positive, looking for the good. And just by doing that, we can start to feel better. Now, there is a system in the brain which is like the brain search engine. It's called the reticular activating system, the RAS. Now, every second, the brain is receiving loads of information. There's enormous amounts of information we are collecting with our senses, and we're not even consciously processing all of it, because we cannot. So the RAS, it helps to filter out the information. Um, uh, and therefore, in order to filter out, it asks what matters, because it wants to absorb, take in only the parts that are relevant, or only something that makes sense or that's useful. Now, the RAS learns from repetition. So, if you repeatedly focus on, say, danger, lack, criticism, then it becomes better at finding those. It's a machine. You train it and it gets trained. Now, if you repeatedly notice the opportunity, support, kindness, it becomes better at finding those too. So this is one of the reasons why a consistent gratitude practice, it can gradually change our outlook. It can change what we are looking for and what we are noticing in everyday life. Everything then, it it's simple, right? We can train the brain. The brain by itself isn't doing much. Whatever we are, however we program it, however we code it is how it functions. And that coding can be changed. It can be rewired. Now, we could resist gratitude. And I hear that sometimes from people, especially, when you're going through a tough time, or when things are not seeming easy, when there's negativity around of some sort, you could feel like, I don't want to pretend everything is fine. Everything is not fine. So why should I practice gratitude? Now, gratitude again is not denial. It doesn't ask us to ignore circumstances and reality and pain, it just asks us to widen, the frame. So if you think about, say, if you think about scales, we could think that life works on one scale. On one end of the scale, I'm feeling that there are challenges and I feel hopeful. And on the other end of the scale, there is, joy and happiness and gratitude. However, I would say that there are two scales. One scale remains. That's probably the difficulties that are existing, the pain that is there. But there is another scale that is of, say, the support we have, and it's not either or. So, in spite of what's wrong around us, in us, in spite of the reality of everyday life, challenges, sometimes health challenges, relationship challenges, all kinds of challenges, we can, with the practice of gratitude and positivity, look more broadly into our lives. And and situations, problems can sometimes, become all pervasive, which means that we could think that if we are struggling with one area of our life in its entirety is bad, or it's in its entirety is difficult, or not worth it, not meeting our expectations, our standards. However, we could um, learn again, and with the practice of gratitude, we could train ourselves to separate what's not working from what's working, and it doesn't get, all mixed up, all merged together. So that is what gratitude helps us do in even very difficult circumstances. It's not asking us to ignore what's not working, but we can simultaneously acknowledge that this is difficult. However, this is something that's working. Both can be true. Yeah, and now one more thing uh, that happens, and I think that we briefly also touched upon yesterday, is that when positive experiences happen, most of them disappear within seconds because, again, the brain is quickly shifting its attention elsewhere. So when someone, say, compliments us, what do? We can be very quick to dismiss it, minimize it, change the subject. But with criticism, we can be replaying it again and again and again, not losing sleep over it. So much less attention, so much less even acknowledgement paid to a compliment vis-a-vis um, to criticism. We can even sometimes reject appreciation. So, so this tells us that we can, again, if we spend more time with the positive, we can encode it more deeply. And the brain, again, it encodes experiences more deeply when we are paying more attention. So when we stay with them, is when the brain actually begins to acknowledge them and use them for memory. So sometimes even, as little as X for 30 seconds a minute is very helpful to strengthen a positive memory. And even say it also helps with motivation. So say, it's hard for you to say go for a walk, or it's hard for you to go to the gym. But when you do it, when you do anything that's positive for you, that you know is helpful for your well-being, post the activity, if you spend some time internalizing the benefit, thinking about the benefit it has created for you, thinking about the goodness that will come to you because of what you've done, reinforcing the benefits for yourself from what you've done, it'll help you feeling more internally motivated, and it'll help you feel much better about the same activity in yourself than if you just do it and then either brush it off or don't pay enough attention to it or just let it go. So extra time spent on noticing, on focusing, on acknowledging the positive helps you strengthen, that memory, reinforce that memory. So what we are seeing is that it's not just then about becoming aware of the positive, it's also about spending more time with the positive. Two steps to um, to feeling more grateful, feeling more sustainable joy. Now, an enemy of appreciation, of gratitude is conditionality. So we can think that when this happens, I will be happy. We postpone our happiness, we postpone our joy, we postpone feeling grateful. We also negotiate sometimes with life, with the universe. At times, even if you believe in God, then God, that if this happens, then I will do this, or if this happens, then finally I will feel like I've been rewarded or I've achieved this in life. But while a grateful mind is not passive, so I'm not saying that by any means. At the same time, it helps us also notice the resources that we do have exactly now in this moment. I don't think that any one of us could sitting here say that we have nothing that's working for us. So yeah, so gratitude also helps us in some way stay present with today. It's a practice of presence because as life exists today, as I am today, as we are today, I am feeling or I am rejoicing in that. It is not about the future. There are no conditions. I meet my life where I am today, and that's something that I can feel, you know, um, joyful for. Now, um, say in yoga, rather than having gratitude, there is another concept called santosha or contentment. It's one of the niyamas in yoga because, again, contentment, I would say, um, is a more, hmm, I would say, it's a more toned down, a way of looking at what we have. But then it also again teaches us to be present, to stop focusing on living in the imagination of what is absent. So rather than thinking what is missing from my life, it helps us ask what is there in my life or what's already been given to me in my life. Any questions so far? We could take them. If not, then I'd like to move into a practice where, we can use um, some of the questions to redirect attention. And if you find any questions that say speak more to you than others, you could use them. Um, you could use them in your meditation or as a journaling exercise at the end of the day, um, to move your attention or to train your attention. Also helps with equanimity, correct? Yeah, equanimity is the quality of the mind where we can not be very, say, swayed by circumstances. It helps us stay, you know, grounded. Helps us stay more present with what is. And equanimity encourages us to be objective. So the fact is that if we look at objectively at life, then equanimity tells us that a lot is working as well. If we just take an objective view of life. So yeah, there could be things that are not working, but there are also things that are working, and we could treat them the same in a way. We can have we can treat them without much emotion, both those things. That's equanimity. So yeah, gratitude in that sense helps with equanimity, I would say, because if the balance is too lopsided, I've been focusing a lot on the negative. Gratitude can help just balance out the scales a bit. and help us, encourage us to think that life is not just bad. There are so many good aspects as well. And therefore, I would say that it also helps with equanimity. So getting into the practice now, I would invite you to sit comfortably, sit alert. If possible, your back straight. You could even be lying down as long as you don't sleep. Or if a nap is something that you need more than a talk, then maybe that might help you better. But yeah, for those of us who can, sitting up, sitting up straight, back straight, and then closing your eyes. Finding your breath. Now, through this practice, we are not forcing ourselves to be grateful. We're simply practicing noticing. And there could be, say, in this set of, say, about 16, 17 questions that we'll quickly go through, you might sometimes struggle, you might not find uh, a good answer, and that's okay. You can skip that. So we are not forcing ourselves, but we're just moving around at attention to see that in case we find something, it's nice, and the more we practice, the easier it might get for us to be able to uh, pick the positive. So again, starting with the first question. Mm, What ordinary moment today was actually extraordinary? For those of us who've joined us now, we are just running through some questions to bring our awareness, to bring our attention to what's working in our lives inside of us. And we can train our attention to look for the positive. So, what ordinary moment today was actually extraordinary, if any? Where did life support me today? Where did life support me today? Where did life support me today? What is working in my life that I rarely acknowledge? What is working in my life that I rarely acknowledge? What is working in my life that I rarely acknowledge? What comfort have I started taking for granted? What comfort have I started taking for granted? What comfort have I started taking for granted? What challenge from my past has unexpectedly become a gift? What challenge from my past has unexpectedly become a gift? What challenge from my past has unexpectedly become a gift? What ability in my body am I grateful for today? What ability in my body am I thankful for today? What ability in my body am I thankful for today? What relationship has enriched my life in ways I rarely acknowledge? What relationship has enriched my life in ways I rarely acknowledge? What relationship has enriched my life in ways I rarely acknowledge? Which strength do I underestimate in myself? This is a good one, I think. Which strength do I underestimate in myself? Which strength do I underestimate in myself? What am I proud of in myself as I am today? What am I proud of in myself as I am today? What am I proud of in myself as I am today? What would someone who loves me appreciate about me today? What would someone who loves me appreciate about me today? What have I done this year that my past self would be amazed by? What have I done this year that my past self would be amazed by? What act of kindness has touched me recently? What act of kindness has touched me recently? Whom would I like to thank more often? Whom would I like to thank more often? What is already here that I keep postponing my appreciation for? What is already here that I keep postponing my appreciation for? Is there something from, say, 5 years ago that I wished for that has become today's reality? So, what wish for from 5 years ago has become today's reality? Last three questions. What in my life once felt impossible but now feels ordinary? What in my life once felt impossible but now feels ordinary? What have I become accustomed to that my younger self would have celebrated? What have I become accustomed to that my younger self would have celebrated? And the last one, how has life been kinder to me than I have noticed? How has life been kinder to me than I have noticed? I think someone's asking me what was the third to the last question. The third to the last question was what in my life once felt impossible but now feels ordinary. So yeah, these were some of the questions we can use to redirect attention. And as we said, it's not either or. We can broaden our outlook, our vision. We can broaden the range of what we notice, and therefore we can become better at finding the positive. So just to recap today, attention is one of the most powerful tools we have, one of the most powerful forces we have in our life. It shapes our emotions, it shapes our memories. um, Again, memories are what we have paid attention to, those become our memories. um, it shapes our relationships. It Attention shapes our experience of the world. So we don't have to try to force ourselves to be grateful, but we can practice noticing, because what we repeatedly notice, we gradually become better at noticing. And therefore, when we notice the good, we start cherishing what we have more. And therefore, it can create for us sustainable joy, sustainable well being. Yeah, that was today. Now, any questions that you could have, uh, you could you could ask that. Anything you want to share about gratitude, your experience. Yeah, and it rewires the neurons as well as what is your opinion? Dini is asking it. Yeah, see, again, the brain has an ability to reform itself, to change the way it processes information, to change the way it thinks about things, the way the information it then throws up to us, the solutions it throws to us. So with any practice, with mm, any practice, any tool that can help us change our thoughts, change the way we look at things, ultimately changes the way then that the brain is giving us information or is giving us solutions. There is one question, which is what if you focus on being grateful to someone you are trying to forgive and they are not making matters better or being helpful at all? How can one go about that? Hmm. Now, again, as we were saying, there are different scales. Now, if you are trying to forgive someone, it means that there is some hurt that is residual. You haven't yet forgiven someone, which stays. So again, not forcing yourself to forgive someone. You are still in the process of, processing that experience or that situation. And maybe, as you are saying, every day more situations are happening to add to that feeling of not feeling great. But at the same time, you are saying, I'm assuming you are saying that you want to also be grateful. So again, there are, these two scales. One is where you are still recovering or you're still in the process of forgiving someone, but they could also be doing things or playing a role in your life which contributes to your well-being or which contributes to you positively in some way. and acknowledging that while not overlooking what's been there. So both can coexist is what I would say to that, if that answers your question. We have yeah. Please speak, Dr. Narula, I think is asking something. Yes, would you like to say something?
I would like to share something
Yes,
actually.
please.
I have been working a lot on forgiving
Okay.
someone who hurted me, very near and dear person of mine.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a hurtful situation. And then I realized as I look back that that particular situation really did hurt. And I feel like I don't want to have anything to do with the person anymore because, you know, it didn't happen once, it's happened repeatedly in my life. But then as time passes, I realize that even I'm not perfect. And even maybe at some point in time, I must have said something or done something to hurt somebody. And if I was in that place and if I knew, I mean, and I'm being told, um, I would say sorry, right? And so, in my opinion, I feel like I agree with, I think, Ardini was saying something about we cannot control how people think or what they're going to say or what they're going to do. We can only control our own feelings, how we perceive it, how we want to take it to the next level, which direction we want to do to take to the next level, whether in a positive or a negative way. Are we going to take it as a lesson? Or are we going to take it as like learning to draw boundaries? You know, things like that. But at the end of the day, if we are going to forgive someone, it's for our peace of mind. It's not for them. They will not know. They will choose to think what they want to think. They will choose to cling on to what they don't want to cling on. Or maybe they felt sorry, but the ego came in between. But then it's not ours to come and, you know, analyze all that. And I learned that like in decades, not in a short time. And the word gratitude came up because my life took a big turn when I learned to start saying thank you to life, even though things were in a very bad state. So I started saying thank you for simple things. So for the person who had hurted me, I tried to look back at what good things they've done for me. And I started with the small little things. And I remind myself every day that the person does have a good virtue. So it doesn't mean we have to, at that time, judge them so hard and don't give them another chance. But I think at the end of the day, you and you alone have to go through all this and decide what you want to do. Yeah. So that's my.
Thank
Mhm.
you. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, I completely agree with you that we could start looking for the negative in someone and then somehow train ourselves to only look at the things they have done which have been, say, unhelpful to us or unwholesome. But when we are in interaction with someone, and especially, say we are living with someone or there's frequent sort of, coming together with this person, there will be things that we've stopped acknowledging that are positive. And again, yeah, that brings us to the earlier question as well from what you said, that when we start redirecting our attention also to the things that they are doing well or that are good, not just for ourselves but generally as people, then we become more neutral or more objective in in opining about this person or thinking about that person, because no person, including ourselves, as you said, is completely bad or good. Even we make mistakes. And I think the same is true for us also. When we beat ourselves up for something we've done, something we've said, we also need to look at the good inside of us. When we only look for weaknesses in us, we criticize ourselves, our bodies, our habits. We fail to look at things we do well. So thank you a lot. Thanks for sharing that. Then there's a comment. It says, when you were telling the questions, I was reflecting. I felt that, yes, I have got several things that I felt are really important, but now after getting, I'm going for higher ones. And the value of those that were really important is left behind. Yes, Abhilasha, that, we can all be sometimes guilty of that, that we are constantly looking for more, 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 and then we get something, it becomes a normal, and then the brain is now looking for something else. So again, stopping and spending some time in acknowledging, in really embodying that positivity, the accomplishment, the quality, can help us sustain that memory for longer. Mm, yeah, yeah. Vardini is saying it is important to never allow anyone other than, yeah, anything or thought to live rent free in our brain. Definitely a gratitude practice is so important. Yes, thanks for sharing that. And again, this week we are journaling as an exercise. So please, if you can, spend some time writing down 10 things that you're grateful for in the day, even in yourself. And on Friday, when we end this module, we can all share some of the things that we felt during the week that we were grateful for. Okay, thank you for being here, everyone. um, Thank you for practicing together. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow, and we'll continue on this theme of gratitude and positivity. So hoping to see you tomorrow again, and have a good day, good evening, wherever you are. Bye.